Chapter 988. Come to think of it, it should have been 4 years since she left him, right? For years, over 1,000 days and nights, he had been thinking of her and looking for her, but it was as if she had vanished into thin air. He couldn't find her no matter how hard he tried. China World Hotel, Beijing. Xia Shangzhou had been busy preparing for Lin Jiai's birthday banquet since noon. Take this purple thing away. She hates this color the most. Remove this lilies as well. Remember, don't put lilies in places where she will appear. She doesn't like the smell of lilies. She finds it pungent. Try to maintain the original taste of this dish. Don't add too many condiments. She likes the original taste of this dish. When the dishes are served, this dish must be placed closest to her. She likes to eat it. And this winter shade skill soup, it must be placed next to her. She doesn't like to eat it, but this soup is good for her body. If it is placed next to her, she will drink a little. Help me hold this blanket first. There's a lot of air conditioning here at night, so it will definitely get cold. She needs it. Help me keep this pair of flats. Remember to pass it to me right after the banquet is over. Also, I want piano music. She likes piano music. Did you put almonds in the cake? She likes to eat. Remember to cut down on soy sauce in all the dishes. She's been whitening recently, and due to her recent trip to the beach, she got tanned. She said that she wants to nurse it back to its original state, so she doesn't want to touch soy sauce anymore. Oh, and Xia Shangzhou was just about to continue when he paused for a moment. I've forgotten about it. Let me think of something first. The manager of the World Hotel Beijing, who was next to Xia Shangzhou, wrote down the details one by one. He couldn't help but half-jokingly say, Mr. Xia, you've always been so concerned about Miss Lin. Those who don't know would think you like Miss Lin. Hearing those words, Xia Shangzhou burst into laughter as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. You should know that she's the boss, so of course I have to lick her boots. The manager replied with a few yes, yes, yes before retreating back to his work. After confirming that there was no one around him, the smile on Xia Shangzhou's face vanished, and a hint of sorrow surfaced in his eyes. Was it really that obvious? It seemed that in the past year, he had heard more and more similar words. However, he had never dared to expect anything from her. He treated her well because he liked her. With such thoughts in mind, Xia Shangzhou walked out of the Beijing World Hotel and headed to a nearby supermarket. There, he picked out a pack of sanitary pads, which was Lin Jiai's favorite. Just now, he wanted to ask the hotel manager to prepare it for him, but when the words were on the tip of his tongue, he realized that it was a private matter and not appropriate. These 2 days were her period. She would never prepare these things in advance. Lin Jiai's birthday banquet was set for 7 p.m., but it was already 7:30, and Lin Jiai still hadn't appeared. The entire family tried calling Lin Jiai one after another, but no one picked up. It was already 8 o'clock, but Lin Jiai was still nowhere to be seen. Since Lin Shi was here, it was impossible for them to go hungry. Old Mr. Lin instructed everyone to start eating, but Xia Shangzhou wasn't in the mood to pick up his chopsticks. He discreetly called Lin Jiai several times, but he was still unable to reach her. Thus, while no one was paying attention to him, he left the Beijing World Hotel and drove to look for her. Chapter 989. Xia Shangzhou searched through all of the places that Lin Jiai liked to visit, the places that she frequented, and the places that she might visit, but he was still unable to find Lin Jiai. Along the way, other than calling Lin Jiai a few times, Xia Shangzhou also called Lin Jiej. He learned that Lin Jiej and the others hadn't been able to contact Lin Jiai while he was away, and Lin Jiai hadn't appeared at his birthday banquet either. As it was already very late, Lin Jiej told Xia Shangzhou that they were preparing to leave. Before hanging up the call, Lin Jiej could tell that Xia Shangzhou was overly anxious, so he consoled him by saying that Lin Jiai would be fine. Even if someone were to harbor evil intentions, the one who would be in trouble would be the one who would be in trouble. Lin Jiej even added that the fact that Lin Jiai's call was able to get through to him could only mean one thing. Lin Jiai didn't want to answer his call. If something had really happened, she would have been the first person to get through to him. Xia Shangzhou knew that Lin Jiej was right, and he knew that the security in the capital had always been good. Even in the dead of the night, it was unlikely that anything would happen. However, he still felt an inexplicable unease in his heart. as if something huge had happened tonight. After hanging up the call with Lin Jiej, Xia Shangzhou sat in his car for a while. Thinking that he wouldn't be able to fall asleep even if he were to return home, he decided to give it a try and drive along the dark streets of Beijing to see if he could find Lin Jiai or not. Perhaps the heavens had seen his sincerity, or perhaps he was just lucky, but when it was nearing 11:30, just as Xia Shangzhou was thinking about giving up on returning home if he still couldn't find Lin Jiai, he suddenly saw Lin Jiai at the entrance of a clubhouse. She was wearing a black dress and a pair of high heels. Standing by the roadside, she would glance at the entrance of the clubhouse from time to time, as if waiting for someone to come out. It was summer, so it wasn't cold at night. However, it seemed like she had been standing there for too long in her high heels that her feet were starting to feel uncomfortable. She was constantly changing her posture, and from time to time, she would even bend over to massage her calves. Upon seeing this sight, Xia Shangzhou immediately stepped on the brakes without any hesitation. He unbuckled his seatbelt and quickly jumped out of the car. Without even calling her name, he ran to the back of the car, opened the trunk, and took out a pair of comfortable slippers. He pressed the lock on the trunk and grabbed his slippers. Just as he was about to make his way over to Lin Jiai, he saw Lin Jiai, who was pacing back and forth at the entrance of the clubhouse, suddenly looking as if she had seen a great ray of hope, and her eyes lit up. She seemed to be very nervous about something, and after a moment of hesitation, she finally raised her feet and began making her way over to the entrance of the clubhouse. It was rare for Lin Jiai to hesitate in such a manner. She was usually a person who worked swiftly and energetically, and it was rare for her to hesitate like this. Seeing her like this, Xia Shangzhou frowned slightly. He instinctively stopped in his tracks and looked in the direction she was running to. A few men in suits walked out of the clubhouse. One of the men was someone whom Xia Shangzhou had never seen before, but he was extremely familiar with. He had once seen his photo in Lin Jiai's office, and even though many years had passed and his appearance had changed a little, he was still able to recognize him. That man was his nightmare, her sweet dream. That man was her first love, the man whom she had muttered innumerable times in her drunken stupor. Chapter 990. Qin Ting. Isn't he dead? Why would he appear here, alive and well? Lin Jiai told him that Qin Ting had died in a travel accident, and his corpse was nowhere to be found. Could it be that Qin Ting wasn't dead at all back then? Could it be that the two of them had lost contact? It was no wonder Lin Jiai wouldn't pick up her phone, even ignoring her birthday. It turned out that he had appeared. While Xia Shangzhou was still in shock, Lin Jiai had already walked up to Qin Ting and stopped him. Qin Ting? He wasn't too far away from her, so he could hear her voice clearly and feel the trembling in it. I'm trying my best to maintain my composure, but I still can't hide the agitation in my heart, can I? Qin Ting halted his footsteps and stared at Lin Jiai in bewilderment. Before Qin Ting could say a word, one of the people around him, President Chun, who had worked with the Lin family enterprise in the past, recognized Lin Jiai, and upon seeing her, he immediately spoke up. Ms. Lin, what a coincidence. You're here too? President Chun turned to Qin Ting and asked, Mr. Qin, so you're acquainted with Ms. Lin? Ms. Lin? Qin Ting finally spoke up. That's right. She's the daughter of the Lin Corporation, Lin Jiai. The most famous project of my company is a collaboration between Boss Lin and me. Mr. Qin, why didn't you tell me earlier that you know Boss Lin? If you had told me earlier, I would have already considered working with you for the sake of Boss Lin. As for the project you mentioned tonight, I'll get my people to evaluate it when I get back. President Chen was delighted to see that everyone here was acquainted with him, and he chattered on for a long time. Then, as if recalling something, he glanced at Lin Jiai before turning to Qin Ting and remarked in bewilderment, But now that you mention it, I'm really perplexed. Mr. Qin, given that you're so close with Ms. Lin, why didn't you consider her first? Qin Ting didn't respond to President Chen's words. Instead, he turned to Lin Jiai. His dark eyes assessed Lin Jiai for a moment before asking, Ms. Lin, may I know if we know each other? President Chun was dumbfounded upon hearing Qin Ting's words. You don't know each other? I don't know you. How does Boss Lin know your name? Hearing those words, Lin Jiai pursed her lips. Ignoring President Chun, she stared fixedly at Qin Ting and continued, You went to university in America? You are the only child of Shandong Province. You grew up in Shanghai. Your birthday is August 24th. You are 31 years old this year. Your English name is Aaron. When you were 19 years old, you had an accident while traveling in September. When you woke up, you were in the hospital, right? Following Lin Jiai's words, the astonishment on Qin Ting's face grew deeper and deeper. Miss Lin, how do you know so much about it? Did you and I really know each other? And very close? Lin Jiai didn't respond to Qin Ting's words. Instead, she continued asking, "It's fine if you don't remember Lin Jiai, but do you still remember Estelle?" Qin Ting seemed to be trying hard to remember. After a while, he shook his head and said, "I'm sorry, I really don't remember." Chapter 991. You also bought a pair of rings with Estelle. It's silver, and it's not worth much. You bought it by the roadside, and it's this pair. As Lin Jiai spoke, she took out a very old ring from her bag and said, "The female one is with me, and the male one is with you. Do you remember?" Qin Ting took the ring from Lin Jiai and examined it carefully. Then, as if racking his brains, he finally shook his head and said 3 words to Lin Jiai. "I'm sorry." Hearing those 3 simple words, Lin Jiai's eyes nearly reddened in an instant. However, as there were others around, Lin Jiai held back her tears. She calmed herself down for a moment before asking, "Do you really not remember anything?" Qin Ting shook his head once more, and he apologized once more. "I'm sorry." But this time, he didn't give Lin Jiai a chance to speak. He immediately said, "Miss Lin, I'm really not too sure what you're talking about, but I'm glad to have met you. I still have other matters to attend to later, so if there's nothing else, I'll be taking my leave first." After saying those words, Qin Ting returned the ring in her hand to Lin Jiai and shot her a polite smile before walking around her and leaving the area. The others also greeted Lin Jiai, but as Lin Jiai ignored them, they found an excuse to disperse after standing by the side of the road for a while. Soon, Lin Jiai was the only one left by the roadside. She stood blankly on the spot, staring at the ring with her head lowered. Qin Ting's car was parked by the roadside, and the man closest to him opened the car door for him. After he got into the car, he walked around the car and got into the driver's seat. Before the car drove off, Qin Ting turned around and looked at Lin Jiai through the car window. But soon, his phone rang in his pocket. Retracting his gaze, he took out his phone and took a look at the caller ID before answering the call. "Honey, why aren't you asleep yet?" "Me? I just finished a business meeting, and I'm about to return to the hotel. I'll be back the day after tomorrow. My flight is in the afternoon, and I'll accompany you for dinner tonight." Sleep early. Good night." After hanging up the phone, his secretary, who was driving, asked, "Chairman Qin, was that madam?" "Yes," Qin Ting replied as he put away his phone. The secretary drove the car for a while and then asked, "CEO Qin, do you really not know that Miss Lin?" Qin Ting didn't reply. Through the car window, he stared at the night view that was constantly passing by, and after a long while, he replied, "I don't remember." "That's a pity, the young mistress of the Lin Enterprise. If you still remember, our company will definitely be able to survive this crisis." Qin didn't say anything else, and the car fell into silence. Qin Ting stared out the window, her fingertips sliding across the phone screen from time to time. Chapter 992. In truth, marrying the daughter of a wealthy family wasn't a bad thing, especially for someone like him who came from an ordinary family. It would save him many years of hard work. However, the good times didn't last long. His wife's company had been on the decline for the past few years, and this year, it was already on the brink of collapse. The reason why he came to Beijing this time was to pull in investments. If he couldn't pull in any more investments, there would only be one outcome for his company: bankruptcy. In truth, he was quite surprised to meet her today. It was fortunate that President Chun had revealed her identity before him. Lin Jiai was a huge company, one that he didn't even dare to dream of working with. Even now, Lin Jiai still remembered him and kept that worthless ring on her finger. Most probably, she still had him in her heart. Just like what his secretary had said, if he could get to know Lin Jiai, he would be able to tide over this crisis. Yes, it was him, but it was just him alone. It wasn't him and his wife. After all, How could a company on the verge of collapse compare to the flourishing Lin family enterprise? With such thoughts in mind, Qin Ting suddenly spoke up, right? Don't tell anyone about what happened to Miss Lin today, especially not to Madam. Fearing that his secretary would overthink things, Qin Ting added, Madam gets jealous easily. If she learns of this matter, she might cause a ruckus. It's fine if it's others, but it's best not to provoke those from the Lin family enterprise. Hearing those words, the secretary immediately spoke up. President Qin, you're right. Even though we can't work together now, it doesn't mean that we can't work together in the future. If Madam were to offend Miss Lin out of jealousy, we might really lose the chance to work together. He doesn't remember me. He actually doesn't remember me. I've loved him wholeheartedly for 11 years, but he actually doesn't remember me anymore. An indescribable pain and discomfort pressed down on Lin Jiai's chest, leaving her breathless. As if a fool, she stood by the side of the road in a daze. She didn't know how long she had been standing there until a gust of cold wind blew. She shivered slightly and slowly came back to her senses. She stared at the ring on her finger for a while, and the more she stared at it, the more sore her eyes became. She raised her head and looked at the sky, forcing back the tears that were about to fall. She then put the ring away and turned to leave. In the end, when she turned her head, she saw Xia Shangzhou standing behind her. He was holding a bottle of mineral water in one hand and a pair of slippers in the other. Paired with his neat and tidy suit, he looked comical no matter how one looked at him. But looking at Xia Shangzhou in such a state, Lin Jiai was taken aback for a moment before her heart suddenly felt at ease. She didn't know when it started, but Navigator was becoming more and more like a man. He was no longer the little boy she had picked up from university. He would always ask for her opinion when something happened, and he would run away when she was angry. She didn't know when it started, but there were a few times when she would always see him behind her whenever she turned around. While Lin Jiai was still in a daze, Xia Shangzhou walked up to her and placed the slippers in front of her. Take off your slippers. Lin Jiai had been standing there for too long, so she nearly fell as soon as she raised her feet. Xia Shangzhou immediately supported her, and after she managed to steady herself, he walked up to her back and squatted down. Sit on my back and take off your slippers. It'll be safer this way, and you won't fall. Chapter 993. Lin Jiai turned her head to look at Xia Shangzhou. She hadn't paid much attention to it in the past, but for some reason, memories of the past kept flashing through her mind. She suddenly realized that there were many times when she was changing her shoes that Xia Shangzhou would squat behind her and act as a chair for her to sit on. She couldn't remember exactly when this started, but it felt like it had been a very, very long time ago. Seeing that there wasn't any weight pressing down on his back, Xia Shangzhou couldn't help but turn his head around out of curiosity. Before his gaze could reach Lin Jiai's upper body, Lin Jiai had already recovered from her daze. She quickly retracted her gaze and sat on his back before bending down to change her shoes. After she changed into her shoes and stood up, she said to Xia Shangzhou, "Thank you." It was a simple word, but it caused Xia Shangzhou, who was just about to stand up, to freeze on the spot. Roughly half a minute later, as if nothing had happened to him, he straightened his back. However, his fingers, which were twisting the cap of the mineral water bottle, were still trembling slightly. "Thank you. I know very well where I stand in her heart. I know that I'm just an employee, a subordinate, an existence who should serve her. But today, she actually thanked me. It was just two simple words, but it left me feeling satisfied for a very long time." After calming himself down, Xia Shangzhou walked up to Lin Jiai and passed the bottle of mineral water to her. "Ms. Lin, have some water." After Lin Jiai took the bottle from him, Xia Shangzhou bent down to pick up the high heels that Lin Jiai had changed out of. "Ms. Lin, I'll send you home." After drinking half a bottle of water, Lin Jiai twisted the cap back on before turning to look at Xia Shangzhou. Xia Shangzhou didn't know what he was panicking about, but he instinctively averted his eyes to avoid her gaze. She replied with a very soft before walking over to his car, which was parked by the roadside. Xia Shangzhou heaved a sigh of relief. He hastened his footsteps and opened the car door for her. After getting into the car, Xia Shangzhou fastened his seatbelt and asked, "Ms. Lin, are you returning to the old manor or your own place?" Let's return to my own place. All right. After a pause, Xia Shangzhou continued, it's your birthday today. You didn't go to your birthday party, and your family has been waiting for you for a long time. They've also called you many times. If you're not going back to the mansion, give them a call so that they won't worry about you. After a moment of contemplation, Xia Shangzhou felt that Lin Jiai must be feeling awful after bumping into Qin Ting today. If she were to call back to the old manor, she would surely be lectured by the elders of the clan. Thus, he added, why don't I give the old manor a call right now? All right. After hearing Lin Jiai's reply, Xia Shangzhou picked up his phone and gave the old manor a call. Hello, old Master Lin. I'm Xiao Xia. Yes, I found President Lin. She's not feeling well. It's fine, it's fine. You don't have to come and see her. I'll send her back to rest. Listening to the conversation between Xia Shangzhou and her grandfather, Lin Jiai's thoughts drifted away once more. Chapter 994. But it was fortunate that she had the GPS with her, so he was able to shield her from it most of the time. After hanging up the phone, Xia Shangzhou turned to look at Lin Jiai and said, I lied that you were sick, and the old master was quite worried about you, so I don't think he'll pursue the matter anymore. Lin Jiai nodded her head and fell silent. Xia Shangzhou also tactfully chose not to speak anymore. It was very quiet in the car. Lin Jiai leaned against the back of the car and closed her eyes to rest. Xia Shangzhou considerately lowered the volume of the radio and raised the temperature of the air conditioner a little. Then, he looked straight ahead and focused on driving. When they passed by a traffic light, Xia Shangzhou suddenly felt bored. So he looked left and right, and eventually, his gaze fell on Lin Jiai's reflection in the rearview mirror. Come to think of it, it seemed to have been 6 years since the first time he met her. Over the past 6 years, the passage of time hadn't left a single mark on her. She was truly a woman blessed by the heavens. Even the heavens favored her so much. With such thoughts in mind, Xia Shangzhou couldn't help but curl his lips into a smile as he stared at Lin Jiai. But soon, the red light turned green, and Xia Shangzhou quickly reined in his thoughts and focused on driving once more. When they were about to reach the entrance of Lin Jiai's neighborhood, Lin Jiai opened her eyes. She stared out the window thoughtfully for a while, then broke the silence in the car. Navigator, Xia Shangzhou replied with an I met Qin Ting today. After working together for so long, they had gained a better understanding of each other's personalities. Lin Jiai would often bring up her worries to Xia Shangzhou. The reason for this was simple. Xia Shangzhou was a man of few words, and he would listen attentively to her words. Once she was done, he would forget everything that she had told him. No one else knew about it, so she trusted him. But he doesn't remember me anymore. But I'm really happy that he's still alive, Xia Shangzhou, who had witnessed the meeting between her and Qin Ting with his own eyes, pretended not to know anything as he listened to her story. Navigator, I was actually quite sad when he didn't remember me, but now that I think about it, it's better than never seeing him again in this lifetime, isn't it? Tell me, now that I'm meeting him, is God moved by me? This must be a chance given to me by God, right? So it's not important that he doesn't remember me. As Lin Jiai spoke, she suddenly called out to Xia Shangzhou, Navigator, can you do me a favor? Xia Shangzhou, who had been listening to her all this time, finally spoke up. Go ahead. I haven't contacted Qin Ting for many years. I don't even know what he's doing or where he's staying. The only thing I know is that he's in Beijing. He's with President Chen tonight, so President Chen must have his contact details. Maybe he knows which hotel he's staying at. Can you help me ask President Chen? Also, can you help me make an appointment with Qin Ting tomorrow? I want to see him again. After hearing Lin Jiai's words, Xia Shangzhou silently tightened his grip around the steering wheel, but there wasn't much of a change in his expression. He waited for her to finish her words, and 3 seconds later, he finally replied with a calm and unhurried tone. All right. Chapter 995. Lin Jiai and Xia Shangzhou fell silent once more. Soon, the car stopped below Lin Jiai's apartment. Xia Shangzhou got out of the car and opened the door for Lin Jiai. Just as Lin Jiai was about to enter the apartment, she suddenly recalled something and turned around to look at Xia Shangzhou. Don't forget about my matter. Xia Shangzhou knew that Lin Jiai was referring to the matter of contacting Qin Ting. He tried his best to maintain his composure as he nodded at Lin Jiai. I remember. Lin Jiai waved her hand and walked into the elevator without saying a word. By the time the elevator doors closed, Xia Shangzhou's eyes were filled with deep sorrow. He stood at the bottom of the building for a very long time until he saw that the lights in Lin Jiai's apartment were already turned on. He knew that she had entered her apartment, so he returned to his car and drove away from her neighborhood. He drove along the quiet street in the middle of the night. After driving for some distance, he suddenly braked and stopped the car by the side of the road. He picked up his phone and searched for Chief Chin's number. He stared at the screen for a long while before he eventually dialed the number. Very soon, the call was picked up, and Chief Chin's familiar voice sounded from the other end. Assistant Xia, why did you suddenly call me? Xia Shangzhou exchanged a few pleasantries with Chief Chin before getting to the point. It's like this. I called you to ask for a person's contact information. His name is Qin Ting, but I'm not too sure about his situation. All right, thank you. I received your message. Also, can I ask you one last thing? Do you know where Mr. Qin lives? Oh, the apartment next to Second Ring Road, right? All right. Thank you so much. I'll treat you to a meal when I'm free. Goodbye. After hanging up the call, Xia Shangzhou tapped open the message Chief Chin had sent him. He stared at the 11 digits for a moment before sending a message over. Hello, Mr. Qin. I'm Xia Shangzhou, Lin Jiai's assistant. Chief Lin would like to meet you tomorrow night. May I know if you're free? Roughly a minute after the message was sent, Xia Shangzhou received a reply from Qin Ting, yes. Following which, Qin Ting sent another message. May I know where to meet? Instead of replying to Qin Ting's words, Xia Shangzhou sent a screenshot of their conversation over to Lin Jiai's WeChat. 5 minutes later, Xia Shangzhou's phone lit up. It was a call from Lin Jiai. Navigator. He agreed to it? That's great. Let's meet at the Peking Hotel tomorrow. When I was in America with him, I said I would take him there for a meal when I had time, but I never had the chance. Cancel all my itineraries for tomorrow night. No, cancel all my itineraries after 3 p.m. Also, tell the manager of the Peking Hotel to prepare the freshest seafood in advance. Qin Ting likes it a lot. Also, let's meet at 6:30 p.m. tomorrow night. Remember to ask them to open that bottle of good wine that I saved. Lin Jiai had been talking to Xia Shangzhou for a very long time now, and when she noticed that Xia Shangzhou had gone silent, she asked, Navigator, are you listening? When I was here, I was listening. Do you remember everything I said? Got it. Is there anything else? Chapter 996. All right. After replying, Xia Shangzhou wanted to say good night. But then he felt that those 2 words were too intimate and too much. In the end, he swallowed them back down and said, Goodbye, Chief Lin. Goodbye, Lin Jiai said before hanging up the phone. Xia Shangzhou listened to the beeping sounds on the other end of the phone for a long while before he finally lowered the phone from his ear. He first searched for the location of the Beijing World Hotel and sent it to Qin Ting before sending a message. Tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. Is this place fine? After receiving Qin Ting's sure, Xia Shangzhou gave a call to the manager of the Beijing World Hotel and relayed all of Lin Jiai's requests to him before tossing his phone onto the passenger seat. It was already late, and he had already accomplished everything she had asked of him, but he didn't seem to have any intention of driving home. He leaned against the back of the car for a very long time before he rolled down the window and lit up a cigarette. As soon as he took a puff, he choked on the smoke and began coughing violently. In truth, he used to smoke in university, but she was the one who told him that she couldn't stand the smell of smoke, so she quit. Occasionally, he would feel like taking a puff or two when he felt vexed, but it seemed like the cigarettes nowadays weren't the same as the ones he used in university anymore. A single puff could cure all worries. When his coughing finally stopped, Xia Shangzhou didn't take a second puff. Instead, he extinguished the cigarette and tossed it into the bin. In truth, there was no need for him to feel so terrible, was there? He had known for a long time that she would never belong to him. For a girl like her, only a dragon among men would be worthy of her. As for him, he had bitterly endured for 5 years after graduation. He had only managed to pay for a down payment in Beijing and buy a small apartment that wasn't even as big as her bedroom. Everyone knew that a princess might not necessarily end up with a prince, but with a knight. Putting aside a prince, he couldn't even be considered as a knight. At the very most, he could only be a guard of the princess. This was a gap that he would never be able to bridge in his entire life. Now, Qin Ting was back. The Qin Ting that she had missed for so long was back. It was good. Anyway, she couldn't be single for the rest of her life. Instead of marrying for the sake of marriage, she might as well be with the person she truly loved. That way, she would live a happy life. Wasn't that the ending he had hoped for? While Xia Shangzhou was in a daze, the phone he threw on the passenger seat suddenly rang. He glanced at the caller ID and answered, "President Zhang. You've returned to Beijing on a business trip? This weekend? Sure, but I can't guarantee anything. You know my situation. I might have to work overtime on the weekends. Haha, isn't the matter of poaching me over? Why are you always teasing me? Okay, I'll contact you this weekend." 4 years ago, Mr. Zhang was the one who had tried to poach him. In the end, he did not manage to poach him. Instead, the two of them became good friends. Occasionally, on the weekends, Mr. Zhang would invite him for afternoon tea or something. He called him just now because he wanted to have coffee with him on the weekends. He said that when he worked overtime on the weekends, Mr. Zhang laughed at him and said that it would have been great if he had jumped to his company earlier. He could be an executor and fish in troubled waters at any time. Yet, Mr. Zhang laughed at him and said that he really loved Lin Corporation. Everyone thought that he loved Lin Corporation, but they didn't know that he only loved one person in Lin Corporation. It was a pity that she already had someone else in her heart. Chapter 997. The next afternoon, before 3 o'clock, Lin Jai stopped her work and had Xia Shangzhou send her to a nearby shopping mall. She had a VIP card at the beauty salon in the shopping mall, so she would come here for a spa session whenever she was free. Most of the time, it was Xia Shangzhou who booked the rooms for her. Today was no exception. While Xia Shangzhou was booking a room for her, Lin Jai was strolling around the shopping mall downstairs. After receiving Xia Shangzhou's call, Lin Jai grabbed the spoils of war she had just bought and headed upstairs. After Lin Jai entered the beauty salon, Xia Shangzhou didn't wander too far away. Instead, he found an empty seat in the cafe on the 5th floor of the shopping mall and ordered a cup of black coffee. After which, he took out his laptop and began helping Lin Jai with her unfinished work in the company. Xia Shangzhou set an alarm, and an hour and 50 minutes later, his alarm rang. He quickly saved the things he had just finished on his laptop before packing up his things. After calling for the waiter to pay the bill, he stood up and headed to the beauty salon downstairs. He waited at the entrance for roughly 10 minutes before Lin Jai walked out under the escort of the president of the beauty salon and her caregiver. For an instant, Xia Shangzhou couldn't recognize the woman standing before him. Her usual waist-length curly hair was straightened and hung softly at the back of her head. As she had to meet many clients every day, her face, which always had makeup on, was now devoid of any adornment. Her clean and fair skin was so tender that she didn't look like a 30-year-old person at all. Instead, she was wearing a white lace shirt, a simple black skirt, and a pair of white flats. She looked youthful and beautiful. At first glance, she looked like an inexperienced university student who had just walked out of school. In Xia Shangzhou's mind, Lin Jai was a flamboyant, wanton, seductive, and radiant woman. He had never seen her in such a simple and elegant manner before, as clean as a piece of white paper that hadn't been dyed in the world. Xia Shangzhou was so stunned that he didn't even notice Lin Jai walking up to him. "How is it? Do I look good?" Lin Jai asked as she spun around Xia Shangzhou gracefully. Recovering from his daze, Xia Shangzhou's gaze lingered on her face for a few seconds longer before he nodded and replied, "You look good? Do you look good this way, or usual?" "Both. I knew you'd say the same thing if I asked you." "Forget it. I won't make things difficult for you. However, I'm sure Qin Ting will like my outfit." When he confessed to me, he told me that the first time he saw me was because I was wearing a white shirt and a black skirt. That was how he noticed me. Xia Shangzhou didn't say a word. With a smile on his face, he took the clothes from Lin Jai's hands and changed the topic. "Boss Lin, it's about time for us to set off. If we delay any longer, the traffic will surely get worse, and you might end up being late. Lin Jai nodded her head in agreement. Chapter 998. After which, Lin Jai asked, Navigator, how tall are you? 185. Oh, that's really quite tall. You're taller than Qin Ting by 5 centimeters. I'm wearing high heels, so I'm around the same height as Qin Ting. When I was in high school, I was already 1.7 meters tall. Back then, I wanted to find a man who was at least 1.85 meters tall, and your height was one of my goals back then. Navigator, to tell you the truth, I used to despise Qin Ting for being too short. When they arrived at the elevator, Xia Shangzhou made use of this opportunity to not respond to Lin Jai's words. As he pressed the elevator button, he thought to himself, even if he doesn't meet your initial requirements, he's the one you like. Even if I meet your initial requirements, I'm the one you don't want. So, no matter how bad he is, I'm still envious of him. After sending Lin Jai to the entrance of China World Hotel, Xia Shangzhou got out of the car, and when he opened the car door for her, he said, I'll wait for you in the car. Let me know when you're done. I'll pick you up at the entrance. After getting out of the car, Lin Jai replied to Xia Shangzhou with, all right. Just as she was about to enter China World Hotel, a thought suddenly occurred to her, and she turned around to look at Xia Shangzhou. You should go eat first. I won't be done anytime soon anyway, so don't just wait in the car. Xia Shangzhou nodded and agreed to it. It was only after Lin Jai's silhouette disappeared from the entrance of China World Hotel that he opened the car door and got into the car. He parked the car at the entrance of a tea house by the side and ordered some food before switching on his laptop. As he ate, he typed on the keyboard, finishing up the unfinished work that he'd helped her with earlier in the afternoon. Every time he finished any work, he would take a look at the time. 30 minutes had passed since she entered China World Hotel, peaking. 1 hour, 1.5 hours, 2 hours. For some reason, it felt like an eternity had passed. It wasn't that he didn't have any work to do, but he just couldn't help but feel as if every minute felt like a year. 2.5 hours after Lin Jai entered China World Hotel, Xia Shangzhou finally finished the rest of her work for the day. It was already 9 o'clock, and his phone was quiet. She hadn't called him to pick her up at the door. With nothing to do, time became even more difficult to pass. Xia Shangzhou stared out the window in a daze, then he stared at the computer screen in a daze. No matter what he was thinking about in the beginning, he ended up thinking about how she was with Qin Ting and whether they were having a good time. When it was almost 10, Xia Shangzhou finally received a message from Lin Jai. Like a prisoner released from prison, he let out a sigh of relief. Then, he quickly packed his things and drove to the entrance of China World Hotel Beijing. A second after he parked the car, he saw Lin Jai and Qin Ting walking out of the elevator through the glass window of the revolving door. She didn't know what the two of them were talking about, but she smiled happily. Xia Shangzhou instinctively averted his gaze away. It was only after they had walked out of the revolving door that he got out of the car and walked to the back seat to open the door for Lin Jai. Lin Jai waved goodbye to Qin Ting before climbing into the car with a bright smile on her face. After Xia Shangzhou closed the door, he nodded politely at Qin Ting and got into the car. Chapter 999. Reflexively, Xia Shangzhou took out a tissue and passed it to the back seat. After Lin Jai took the tissue, he adjusted the temperature in the car a little higher. After which, he took a blanket from the front passenger seat and passed it to her. Lin Jai took the blanket and wrapped it around herself before saying, The air conditioning in the Beijing World Hotel is really too cold. It's freezing me to death. My entire legs are cold. While driving, Xia Shangzhou replied, You'll feel much better after taking a bath. I'll buy you a cup of hot tea when we pass by a cold drink shop later on. Lin Jai was clearly in a good mood, and she spoke a lot more than usual. Navigator, I've realized that you're becoming more and more like a homebody. In the past, I always thought that you were just a little brat, but it seems like you're becoming more and more like a man now. You're so considerate and considerate. Whoever marries you will surely be blessed. Oh right, Navigator, you're not young anymore, are you? Haven't you met a girl you like yet? Didn't you say that you were still chatting with the junior whom I introduced to you 2 years ago? What happened after that? Is there no after that? What about that Miss Zhang who came after? She's pretty and capable. Why, you don't like her either? Wait for me then. I'll look for another one for you in the near future. Xia Shangzhou didn't turn down Lin Jiai's willingness to matchmake him. Instead, he replied with an Navigator, Qin Ting has really lost his memory. He doesn't remember me anymore, but he doesn't seem any different from before. When he saw me today, he said the exact same thing he said to me back then. Do you think that counts? No matter how many years have passed, the feeling I give him is still the same. Navigator, Qin Ting is leaving tomorrow. He's working for a small company, and I've never heard of it before. However, he'll be coming to Beijing next week. The car was silent, and Xia Shangzhou quietly listened to Lin Jiai's recount of what happened between her and Qin Ting that night. Even though he didn't really want to hear it, he didn't interrupt her. On the afternoon of the same day, Lu Binlai went to meet the president of a bank. By the time they ended their conversation, it was already 6 in the evening. Lu Binlai noticed that the weather was exceptionally good today, so when the driver drove him past Ji University, he suddenly had a sudden urge to ask the driver to let him down. After which, he asked for the car keys and got the driver to knock off early. Even though he had stayed in Beijing after graduation, he had been too busy. He hadn't returned to Ji University for quite some time. Now that he was back, the layout was no different from when he was still in school. However, some of the school buildings had been renovated and were much newer. Lu Binlai was a little, and he didn't care about his expensive suit. Instead, he sat down casually before he too and he had to, made, and stared at, and said, Aishan, and said, and he, and Lu. And Zhangji University was huge, and Lu Binlai was feeling a little tired after walking around the campus. Thus, he found a spot on the field and casually sat down, ignoring the expensive suit he was wearing. After which, he began staring at the students playing basketball not too far away. Liang, Lu, Lin Lu. A while later, he. Chapter 1000. Who's playing a prank on me? Lu Binlai frowned. He stood up in displeasure and turned around to take a look. There, he saw an adorable little girl dressed in a pink dress. She was hugging a teddy bear, and she was looking at him with her head tilted upward. The fire in his belly was instantly extinguished by the little girl's gaze. He stared at her for a moment before realizing that there weren't any adults around. He quickly looked around, but other than students, there wasn't anyone else around. It can't be that some family's little girl got lost, can it? Lu Binlai pondered for a moment before squatting down. With the calmest voice he could muster, he asked, Little girl, where are your parents? The little girl seemed a little timid. She stared at him for a moment, and after confirming that he wasn't in danger, she finally asked, Daddy, what is that? Perhaps the little girl really didn't know what a daddy was, but she looked at him innocently, waiting for his answer. Seeing the anticipation in the little girl's eyes, Lu Binlai suddenly felt a little heartache. Could it be that this little girl came from a single-parent family and didn't have a father? Is that why she's asking such a question? Lu Binlai pondered for a moment before asking, What about your mother? The little girl shook her head. I can't find her. All right, it's really as I thought. She got lost. The adults in this little girl's family must be panicking right now, right? With such thoughts in mind, Lu Binlai said, How about this, little girl? I'll bring you to the nearest police station to look for the police officer, all right? The little girl shook her head once more. The police officer can help you find your mother. The little girl shook her head once more. Lu Binlai frowned. If she didn't want to follow him to the police station, what if she cried and threw a tantrum? What if someone thought that she was a human trafficker? But he couldn't possibly go to the police station alone and leave her here, could he? Should he call 110? Just as Lu Binlai was trying to come up with a solution, the little girl suddenly reached out and took out a tag from her neck. She raised it to Lu Binlai's face. Lu Binlai took a look at the tag and saw an address and phone number written on it. Clearly, her parents had given it to the little girl so that she wouldn't lose it. Lu Binlai took out his phone and dialed the number on the tag. It rang many times, but no one answered. Seeing that the sky was gradually darkening, Lu Binlai took a look at where the little girl lived, and it wasn't too far away from Ji University. Thus, he said, Uncle will send you home to look for your mother, all right? The little girl seemed to be studying something. She stared at Lu Binlai for a moment before nodding her head lightly. With a childish voice, she replied, "All right." Lu Binlei's heart softened in an instant. He stood up, intending to bring the little girl to the address, only to realize that the little girl wasn't moving at all. He stared at her in bewilderment for a moment, and just as he was about to ask her what was wrong, she suddenly extended her arms toward him, asking for a hug. A 3-year-old baby couldn't walk anymore. What else could he do? Lu Binlei bent down and picked up the little girl. The little girl was very light, and her body was soft. As soon as she fell into his arms, he felt a sharp pain in his heart. Following which, the little girl wrapped her arms around his neck, and the soft and warm sensation made Lu Binlei's heart warm up once more. Lu Binlei froze on the spot for a moment before carrying the little girl to the address. It didn't take long for Lu Binlei to find the little girl's house. He pressed the doorbell, and soon, anxious footsteps sounded from within. Chapter 1001. Not too long later, the door opened from the inside. The one who walked out was a middle-aged woman. Upon seeing the little girl in Lu Binlei's arms, she immediately rushed over and yelled, "Little darling, where did you run off to? Do you know how anxious I was? I've been looking for you for half a day now." Upon seeing the middle-aged woman, the little girl immediately let go of Lu Binlei's neck and opened her arms to the middle-aged woman. With a cute voice, she called out, "Grandma, little darling, you mustn't do this in the future. If you run out without saying a word again, Grandma will really get angry. When your mother comes back, I won't care if she scolds you." The middle-aged woman took the little girl from Lu Binlei's arms as she continued to talk to the little girl. The little girl shook her head and said, I don't want Mommy to scold me." As she spoke, she kissed the middle-aged woman on the cheek and said, "Hello, Grandma, Grandma, Grandma." The little girl probably didn't know how to speak that much, and even when she acted coquettishly, she could only utter a few words. However, it was more than enough to soften the middle-aged woman's heart, and the anxious expression on her face softened. However, the middle-aged woman still pretended to be angry and said to the little girl, "You're not allowed to do that in the future." After the little girl nodded obediently, the middle-aged woman turned to Lu Binlei and said, "Sir, thank you so much. Thank you for bringing little darling back." "You're welcome." Lu Binlei raised his wrist to take a look at the time. It was about time for the video conference he had to attend, and he was in a hurry to get back. Without wasting any time with the middle-aged woman, he said, "Since I've brought the child back, I still have some matters to attend to. So I'll be taking my leave first. Let me send you off," the middle-aged woman said as she walked over to the elevator and pressed the button for Lu Binlei. Just as the elevator was about to reach the elevator, the middle-aged woman turned to the little girl in her arms and said, "Little darling, say goodbye to Uncle." The little girl obediently waved her hands at Lu Binlei and said in a tender voice, "Goodbye, Uncle." Those 4 simple words melted Lu Binlei's heart. He instinctively raised his hand and gently stroked her head. In truth, he didn't really like children, but for some reason, he just couldn't help but feel an inexplicable urge to get close to this little girl. His hand lingered on her head for a moment before he reluctantly smiled and said, "Little friend, goodbye," before retracting his hand and entering the elevator. After the elevator door closed, the middle-aged woman carried the little girl home. "Darling, Granny will take you to wash your hands first." With that, the middle-aged woman closed the door behind her and carried the little girl to the bathroom. However, before she could take 2 steps, the living room door that had just been closed not long ago was knocked on again. "Auntie? Auntie?" Through the door, the little girl's eyes immediately lit up when she heard the voice coming from outside. "Mommy!" Then, she twisted her body, slid down from the middle-aged woman's arms, and ran to the door. She was short, so she tried her best to tiptoe, but she couldn't reach the doorknob. In the end, a middle-aged woman rushed over and helped her open the door. Chapter 1002. Lung Kiki immediately lowered her head and said, "Mommy, I was wrong. It's like this every time, but you don't listen to me. Mommy, I'm really in the wrong," Lung Kiki said as she snuggled into Lung Wan's embrace. She raised her head and kissed Lung Wan's face. "Mommy, don't be angry. Mommy is pretty. Mommy is pretty," Seeing that Long Nuan wasn't going to hug her, Long Kiki buried herself deeper into her embrace. Mommy, I love you. Mommy. Unable to stand it any longer, Long Nuan sighed helplessly. She reached out to carry Long Kiki, and as she stood up, she didn't forget to reason with the latter. Kiki, if you're going out in the future, you can ask Granny to accompany you. If you go out alone, you'll definitely run into bad people. If that happens, you won't be able to see your mother anymore, understand? When Long Kiki heard the words, I won't be able to see my mother again, her eyes immediately turned red. Large droplets of tears fell from the corners of her eyes. No, I want my mother. I want my mother. Then you're not allowed to run around alone in the future, understand? Inin, I know. Long Kiki sobbed as she hugged Lung Nuan tightly. After entering the bathroom, when Lung Nuan was bathing Long Kiki, she noticed that the latter was holding onto a golden cufflink. That was something only men would use. Lung Nuan frowned. Kiki, where did you get this thing from? Long Kiki stretched out her fair and tender little hands, playing with the water as she replied, Uncle? Uncle. Even though Kiki had only said 2 words, Lung Nuan knew what she was trying to convey. Since she was young, Kiki had always liked to grab shiny things. If she wasn't mistaken, this cufflink must have been worn by the man who brought Kiki home. The man probably didn't even notice when Kiki reached out to grab it. However, judging from the style and brand of this cuff, it was obviously expensive. Such an expensive thing had to be returned eventually. With this thought in mind, Lung Nuan placed the cufflinks into her pocket before bending down to help Kiki wash her hands. After dinner, Lung Nuan played with Kiki for a while before coaxing her to sleep. Lung Nuan read Snow White thrice before Coco finally fell asleep. After covering Kiki with the blanket, Lung Nuan tiptoed out of the bedroom. Little darling is asleep? When the auntie saw Lung Nuan coming out, she immediately poured her a glass of water. Lung Nuan replied with a soft as she took the cup of water. After drinking half a cup, she suddenly recalled the cufflink and raised her head to ask the auntie, Did the man who sent Coco home today call you? She was busy at work, so the auntie was the one who took care of Kiki. Most of the phone. Hearing Lung Nuan's words, the auntie immediately picked up her phone to take a look. There's a missed call. It should be from the man who sent Nanan back in the afternoon. However, I was downstairs looking for Kiki at that time, so I didn't receive his call, after which, the auntie turned to Lung Nuan and asked, Do you want it? Pass it to me. Lung Nuan put down the cup of water, picked up her phone, and jotted down the phone number that the auntie had given her. Chapter 1003. By the time he got home and finished his video conference, it was already 11 at night. Lu Binlai took a hot shower to wash away his fatigue before opening a bottle of red wine. He sat on the sofa in front of the floor-to-ceiling window and stared at the night view as he slowly sipped on his wine. Before he knew it, he had already drunk half a bottle of wine. He poured himself another glass of wine and took a sip. Then, he reached out and pulled out his personal cell phone. Entering WeChat, he tapped on the lemon that he had pinned at the top. The entire page was filled with messages that he had sent her. He scrolled up the screen until his fingertips were aching, but he didn't see a single reply from her. He knew that her message would only appear on the screen if he scrolled back to 4 years ago. Yet, he continued scrolling until he saw her reply from 4 years ago. Only then did he tap into the chat box and start typing. Nuan, I swiped the screen 347 times today before I saw your reply. Nuan, you've been away from me for 4 years, 1 month and 3 days. And Nuan, do you still remember? 5 years ago today, we went to eat hot pot together. It happened to be your summer break that day, so we went shopping together after eating hot pot. I bought you a beautiful dress. And Nuan, did you have a good day today? I was still the same. I woke up at 8 in the morning and arrived at the office at 9. I was busy the entire morning, and in the afternoon, I met the president of a bank. Seeing that the weather wasn't bad, and I happened to be passing by G University, I decided to go for a stroll. G University hasn't changed much from before. Wherever I go, it's as if I can see your shadow. Oh, that's right. I met an especially beautiful and obedient little girl today. She got lost, so I sent her home. Nuan, I've said so much, but I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Perhaps you won't be able to see it, but you might be able to see it, but you'll just ignore me after you see it. Nwan, I miss you, but I don't know if you'll miss me. Nwan, I'm sorry. I can't even remember how many times I've apologized to you. Nwan, it's been 1,460 days since you left, but I'm still waiting for you. Nwan, I believe that our story is not finished yet. One day, we can say long time no see. Staring at Lung Wan's WeChat, Lu Binlai muttered to himself for a long time before finally exiting WeChat. He tapped open his contacts and searched for Lung Wan's phone number. He had lost count of how many times he had dialed it. The reply he got was still the same. Sorry, the number you have dialed is not available. In fact, one day, this sentence became, sorry, the number you have dialed does not exist. However, the next day, he asked his assistant to register this number at the business office. He worked hard to preserve all of her things because he hoped that one day, she would come back and everything would go back to how it was before. After putting down his personal phone, Lu Binlai gulped down another half a cup of wine before whipping out his phone. There were a few unread messages. 2 of them were advertisements, 2 of them were from partners, and 1 of them was from an unknown number. Chapter 1004. I've already sent the little girl home safely. Is the little girl's family contacting me to express their gratitude? In truth, Lu Binlai didn't think there was a need for that. After all, it was just a simple gesture from an ordinary person. If it had been anyone else, he might have ignored such a message. However, the little girl he saw in the afternoon was simply too adorable and likable. Lu Binlai pondered for a moment before replying, "Yes, I am." It was already past midnight. Lu Binlai thought that the person who had sent him the message would have already gone to bed and wouldn't be replying to his message for the day. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect that a second after he put down his phone would ring with a ding-dong. Picking up his phone, he saw that it was a message from an unknown number. "Sir, I'm sorry to disturb you. It's like this. When I was washing my daughter's hands today, I noticed a cufflink in her hand. It looks like it's quite expensive, so can you give me your address? I'll send it over to you." When he returned home and was changing his clothes, he realized that he had lost a cufflink. He thought that he had accidentally dropped it on the floor. But in the end, it turned out that the little girl was the one who had snatched it away. However, he didn't want strangers to know too much about him. After pondering for a moment, Lu Binlai recalled that he had an appointment in the Rose Garden tomorrow night. "Thus," he replied, "I happen to be having dinner near your neighborhood tomorrow night. If it's convenient, can you deliver the cufflink to my restaurant?" "Sure, but I might have to work overtime. How about 8:30? "Sure. I'll contact you tomorrow night then." Upon seeing this, Lu Binlai didn't respond to the other party's message. The next day, at 8 a.m. sharp, Lu Binlai was woken up by his alarm. The first thing he did when he woke up was to brush his teeth while sending Lung Wan a WeChat message. "Good morning, Nwan. In Nwan, the weather in Beijing is great today. I wonder where you are and if the weather is good? In Nwan, remember to eat breakfast. I'm going to work now." It was another busy day. Lu Binlai's original plan was to have an appointment that night, but plans couldn't keep up with the sudden changes. Lu Binlai had to go on a business trip, and his flight was at 9 p.m. that night. He returned home at 6 a.m., hastily packed a few clothes, and rushed to the airport. On the way to the airport, he kept answering the phone. When he arrived at the airport, he finally didn't have to make a phone call, but he had to go through a series of check-in procedures. When he entered the VIP lounge, he finally had some free time. At 8:30, the flight attendant reminded him that it was time to board the plane. Just as Lu Binlai was about to leave the VIP lounge with his briefcase in hand, the phone in his pocket suddenly rang. He took out his phone and took a look at the caller ID. It was an 11-digit number, and it looked a little familiar. However, Lu Binlai wasn't able to match it to the number. Lu Binlai tapped on the screen and answered the call, after which he placed the phone to his ear and said, "Hello?" There was no sound from the other end of the line. Lu Binlai waited for a moment before replying with another hello. This time, he added a few more words. "Hello, may I know who you are?" There was still silence on the other side of the phone. Through his phone, Lu Binlai could hear the sound of cars passing by, as well as the occasional honks. He frowned. Seeing that the other side was still silent, he spoke again. "I'm sorry." Chapter 1005. He frowned, but seeing that there was still silence on the other end, he spoke up once more. "I'm sorry. The remaining, may I know who you are? Why aren't you speaking?" Before Lu Binlai could finish his sentence, the other party had already hung up on him. Just like that, the words that Lu Binlai was about to say got stuck in his throat. Hearing the do tone from his phone, he couldn't help but feel a little flustered. Seeing that Lu Binlai wasn't moving, the air stewardess walked over and reminded him, "Mr. Lu, it's about time for you to board the plane." Recovering from his daze, Lu Binlai put his phone away and began making his way to the boarding gate. However, after taking 2 steps, he suddenly paused. For some reason, he felt that there was more to that call. After a moment of contemplation, he took out his phone and gave the other party a call. After the call was connected, it rang many times, but no one answered. Lu Binlai frowned, and the uneasiness in his heart intensified. After contemplating for 2 seconds, he made another call. This time, the call went through, but unlike before, there was no one picking up. Instead, there was a response very quickly, but the other party had already hung up. It was one thing for the other party to remain silent after picking up the call, but when he called the other party didn't pick up either. What was the meaning of this? Lu Binlai wanted to make a third call, but before he could touch his phone screen, a notification popped up on his screen. It was from the unknown number that had called him earlier. "Hello, sir. I'm here to deliver the cufflinks to you. May I know which compartment of the restaurant are you in?" Upon seeing this message, Lu Binlai suddenly realized why he found this number so familiar. It turned out to be the mother of the little girl whom he had sent home yesterday. He had arranged to meet her at the entrance of the restaurant, but he was simply too busy today. After going on an abrupt business trip, he had been busy answering calls non-stop, so he had completely forgotten about this matter. Lu Binlai quickly replied, "I'm sorry, but I have to go on an abrupt business trip today, so I won't be able to meet you." "Is that so? If it's convenient for you, can you give me an address so that I can mail it to you? Or perhaps you have another contact. I can deliver the cufflinks to them." Lu Binlai was the one who had decided to meet Zhang Xin tonight, but he was the one who had broken the appointment. He felt a little embarrassed, so Lu Binlai pondered for a moment before replying, "It's the weekend tomorrow. Are you at home? If you're at home, I'll ask the driver to pick it up at the entrance of your neighborhood. That way, it'll save you some trouble. What do you think?" "All right." Lu Binlai didn't respond. He lifted his feet and continued to walk towards the boarding gate. After walking for a short distance, his phone rang again. It was a message from the little girl's mother. "When your driver comes tomorrow, ask him to contact this phone number. This is my auntie's phone number. I promised my daughter tomorrow that I would accompany her to Ocean Park, so I won't be at home. However, I gave the cufflinks to my auntie at home. She's always available." Lu Binlai wasn't in a hurry to reply. Instead, he briefed his driver on the situation, and after the driver informed him of the approximate time he would be heading over tomorrow, he sent a message to the little girl's mother. "The driver will be there at around 3 in the afternoon tomorrow." Chapter 1006. It was only after Lu Binlai boarded the plane that he saw the message. He replied with, "It's fine," before switching off his phone. At the same time, at the entrance of the rose garden, Lung Nuan felt her phone vibrating, and she subconsciously unlocked the screen. When Lung Nuan saw that he only replied after a long while, "It's fine," she finally couldn't hold herself back, and her eyes reddened. She had recognized who he was from the very brief hello she had heard from him on the phone. She thought that after such a long time, the people she should have forgotten and the things she shouldn't have remembered were all just a dream to her. But when he suddenly appeared in her world again, she realized that in life, there would always be such a person. You thought you had long forgotten him, but in reality, he was still deeply hidden in your heart, and it was even more deeply rooted. She wondered what kind of man would send Coco home. Judging from the cufflinks, he should be a successful man. She also thought that a person who could wear such expensive accessories had to be a middle-aged man who loved children. But never in her wildest dreams could she have imagined that the person would actually be him. Just from his voice alone, she was able to recognize him. Lu Binlai. Lu as in Lu Binlai. Binlai as in there's nothing in the world. Where does dust come from? Lu Binlai. There were a total of 19 strokes of these 3 words. Lu Binlai. Lung Wan's thoughts didn't manage to make their way into her mind. Like a fast-forward scene in a movie, the memories of the past suddenly flashed across her mind like a storm. Recently, Shi Yao had been finding all kinds of snack wrappers in Lin Shi's pocket. Once or twice, Shi Yao thought that Lin Shi might have bought them himself, but as the number of times increased, she gradually realized that something was amiss. After all, the allowance Lin Shi had in his pocket wasn't enough to pay for so many snacks. Lin Shi was only 3.5 years old, so there shouldn't be any major problems. However, Shi Yao was still a little worried that Lin Shi might have used some underhanded means to steal snacks from the other children in the kindergarten. So, she asked the kindergarten teacher for an explanation, and the result was that other than his desk mate Long Kiki, who made him cry every day, Lin Shi didn't seem to have any other problems. Unable to understand the situation from the teacher, Shi Yao decided to find a time to have a heart-to-heart talk with Lin Shi. Shi Yao had to attend classes, and she was quite busy as well. Thus, she found a weekend to do so. However, before she could have a heart-to-heart talk with Lin Shi, she first had to get rid of him, who would surely cause trouble if she were to spend too much time with her son. The reason Shi Yao used was, "Hubby, I want to eat jellies, potato chips, popcorn, fruit candies, lollipops, preserved fruits, candied plums, crispy noodle snacks, biscuits, bubble gum, chewing gum, puffed snacks, creamed melon seeds, peanuts, walnuts, toffee, sesame paste, Wangzai milk, broad beans, orchid beans, pistachios, walnut kernels, almonds, hazelnuts, beef jerky, pork cubes, grilled fish fillets, seaweed, shredded squid, shrimp sticks, raisins, figs." At the end, Shi Yao added, "Reward for buying these things is a kiss." Chapter 1007. After Lin Jiej left, Shi Yao headed straight to Lin Shi's room. Pushing open the door, the first sight that greeted Shi Yao was little Lin Shi lying on the bed, holding onto his charging phone, watching a short video. "Munchkin, didn't I tell you not to look at your phone all the time? You'll damage your eyes. If you continue like this, I'll confiscate your phone. You promised me that I could look at my phone for 10 minutes a day, but I've only been looking at it for 2 minutes now. I have a timer, so it's unreasonable for you to confiscate my phone just like that. Secondly, you've remembered wrongly. You didn't say that I shouldn't look at my phone all the time. You said that I shouldn't place a charged phone next to my pillow because it'll explode. I've thought about it for a long time, and I've come up with a solution. Look, I've thrown my pillow on the floor, and my phone is so far away from it that it won't explode. Thirdly, your medical knowledge isn't good enough. As long as you maintain a certain distance from your phone, your eyes won't get damaged. Those who get damaged eyes are just not used to it. If I don't pay attention to my sitting posture while reading books every day, my eyes will still get damaged. In summary, you can't blame your phone for damaged eyes." Shi Yao was rendered speechless by Shi Yao's words. She was the one who came here to have a heart-to-heart talk with her son. So why was she rendered speechless by her son before they even started? Speaking of which, who did her son inherit his powerful logical thinking skills from? All right, I'll apologize to you. However, your eyes haven't recovered yet, so you shouldn't look at your phone too much. Got it? I got it, Mom. You've already said those words 346 times. Shi Yao was rendered speechless once more. To be so sensitive to numbers from a young age, just who did she inherit this from? Mom, why aren't you saying anything? I'm wondering whose child you are. Mom, I know that I'm your child. When I was young, I was fooled by you too, telling me that my mother was a rock in my great-grandfather's courtyard. Back then, when you were cleaning up the rocks, I hugged the rock and called out Mommy, telling you not to touch me. That's all in the past. I can only blame myself for being too young to understand your tricks, but you can't fool me anymore, Shi Yao. We can't have a heart-to-heart talk anymore. What should I do? What did he mean by it was in the past? Was it appropriate to use the word past for a 3.5-year-old child? Also, too young. Are you that old now? Yao decided that it was better to cut to the chase and not waste her time on her son. In any case, she wouldn't be able to outlast him. So, she adopted the posture of a mother and looked at Lin Shi sternly. Snacks, tell me honestly. What's going on with the packaging of the snacks in your pocket? Where did it come from? Is it from? Mom, I didn't steal it from the kids. I don't want to steal from them. Yao was silent for a moment before asking, why did you say that it's beneath your dignity to snatch a child's belongings? Didn't mommy tell you to be friendly with your friends? Chapter 1008. Yao, where did you inherit such a proud and arrogant personality from? Yao, then where did your snacks come from? Lin Shi's eyebrows shot up proudly as he replied, my mother-in-law gave them to me. Lin Shi's reply nearly caused Yao to fall to the ground. Little Snack liked to watch videos on the internet and had a good memory, so he had a photographic memory of many things. Then, he would say a string of things, shocking the adults in the family until they were speechless. Thinking that it was some kind of joke, Yao asked, tell me, where did you learn that joke from? Seeing that his mother didn't believe him, little Lin Shi immediately put on a stern expression and gazed at Yao with a serious expression. With a childish voice, he said, Mommy, it's not a joke. It's the truth. My snacks were all given to me by my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law really likes them. Do you know what mother-in-law means? I do. It's my wife's mother. Yao. Oh no. The person before me isn't a 3.5-year-old son, but a 30-year-old son, right? Before Yao could calm herself down and speak, little Lin Shi continued, Mommy, I know what you're going to ask next. Do you know what a wife is? I do. A wife is a grandmother to a grandfather, a mother to a father, a great-aunt to a young master, and a great-aunt to Uncle Xia. Great-aunt to Uncle Xia. Sis Jiai to Xia Shangzhou? Yao couldn't help but burst into laughter. Little Snack, you're right at the start, but you're wrong at the end. There's no relationship between your great-aunt and your Uncle Xia, so don't try to matchmake them. Mommy, what do you mean by matchmaking them? It means that people who aren't husband and wife are forced to be husband and wife by you. As she spoke, Yao realized that her son had diverted the topic, so she quickly returned to the main topic. Little Snack, I'm not here to discuss this with you. I'm asking about your snacks. Mommy, why don't you believe me? They were really given to me by my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law really likes me. The first day she met me, she gave me all of the snacks in her bag. She even told me that if I were to be disfigured, she would betroth Kiki to me, and I agreed to it. So, Mommy, you must remember that I'm different from my aunt. I'm no longer a single dog. Please don't drag me into it when you talk about my aunt in the future. Look at you, Lin Jiai, you're not even married yet. You only have Lin Shi as a single dog at home. Yao, I feel like beating my son. What should I do? Yao, even if Keek's mother likes you, there's no need for her to give you snacks every day, is there? Hearing those words, Lin Shi also felt that it made sense. He tilted his head to the side and pondered for a moment, but he still couldn't make sense of it. Chapter 1009. Also, Keek's mother's name doesn't make sense. She's called Lung Nuan. How can she be called Nuan when she's cold, and how can she be called Lung when she's warm? Lung Nuan, upon hearing this oddly familiar name, Yao's expression suddenly froze. She didn't even pay attention to what little Lin Shi was mumbling to himself after that. Lung Nuan. Lung Nuan. These two words, she would always bring them up whenever she chatted with Jiang Yu and He Tiantian. Without waiting for little Lin Shi to finish his words, Yao suddenly rushed up to her son, squatted down, and looked him in the eye before asking once more, Snack, what did you just say? What's the name of Keek's mother? Lung Nuan. Kiki told me about it. As little Lin Shi spoke, he picked up a bag of snacks by the bedside and stuffed it into his mouth. Right, Mommy, Keek's mother asked me about your name too. She even asked me if you're good, and when I told her that you're good, she smiled and said something along the lines of, as long as you're good. Xiao Lin's casual words caused Yao's fingertips to tremble slightly. She reached out to grab a few snacks from her son's hands and stuffed them into his mouth before asking, other than what Keek's mother said to you, what else did you say to her? Have you told her about our family situation? Mommy, I told Keek's mother that you're a teacher and that Daddy runs his own company. I also told her that great-grandpa, 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 great-aunt, 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 and great-aunt all work in the company Grandpa founded. After hearing those words, Shi Yao's fingertips trembled even more violently. There were countless names in the world, and it was inevitable that there would be many people with the same name. However, she was certain that the Lung Nuan her son was talking about was the Lung Nuan she was looking for. Nuanyuan must have recognized him after hearing Snack's words, and that was why she asked him who his mother was. Most likely, it was because she knew that Lin Shi was her son that Nuanyuan would give him snacks every day. In order to prove her conjecture, she asked, Snack, were you the one who told Keek's mother about our family situation first before she asked you who I am? How could Lin Shi possibly know what Shi Yao was plotting? Hearing her question, he immediately recalled that Shi Yao had warned him not to speak of his family's situation to others. Thinking that his mother was trying to settle the score with him, he immediately lowered his head and admitted his mistake obediently. Mom, I was wrong. I was just trying to leave a good impression on Keek's mother, so I accidentally spilled the beans. I know that I shouldn't have said such things to strangers, but I won't do it again. It's really Nuanyuan. It's really Nuanyuan. It's been 4 years since she left without saying goodbye on the day of her wedding. I've finally found her. Shi Yao's heart suddenly started beating furiously. Seeing that his mother wasn't saying a word, little Lin Shi rolled his eyes and admitted his mistake once more. Not forgetting to defend himself, he said, Mom, I was really wrong. I won't dare to do it again. Mom, Keek's mother is my mother-in-law now, so she's not a stranger anymore. Please don't be angry anymore. Shi Yao, who wasn't listening to Lin Shi's words at all, waited for her emotions to calm down before reaching out to touch her son's face. Snack, I'll send you to kindergarten tomorrow morning. Chapter 10:10. He did something wrong, but not only did his mother not reprimand him, she even insisted on sending him to kindergarten and kissing him. Could there be some kind of conspiracy behind all of this? Little Lin Shi rolled his dark eyes around. Determined to appear more obedient, he immediately said, Mommy, I'm going to take a bath. I'll wash my socks on my own. I don't need you to read me a bedtime story today. I can sleep on my own. Also, I thought about my phone, and I don't think it's good for my eyes, so I won't look at it anymore. As she spoke, Kobayashi flipped over and rolled from the bed to the floor. Then, she got up and slipped into the bathroom. Watching little Snack's adorable back as he fled, Shi Yao couldn't help but chuckle. He was such a bootlicker, and his survival instincts were off the charts as well. Soft? Cowardly? Early the next morning, Shi Yao pulled Kobayashi out of bed. Throughout the entire process of Shi Yao helping Kobayashi wash up and get dressed, little Snack's eyes remained glued to the bed. The kindergarten started at 8, and before it was even 6, Shi Yao had already stuffed little Snack into the car and headed to the kindergarten. Little Lin Shi was the only child in the kindergarten, and Shi Yao couldn't care less about how pitiful he looked being left alone in the classroom. She shoved him into the hands of the principal and left. However, Shi Yao didn't really leave. Instead, she found a spot slightly further away and sat in the car, staring at the entrance of the kindergarten. About 45 minutes later, parents came to send their children into the park one after another. Shi Yao stared intently at the parents lining up at the entrance, afraid that she would miss a single one of them. At around 7:45 minutes, she saw a familiar figure carrying a little girl off the bus and rushing toward the entrance of the kindergarten. Even though it had been many years since they last met, even though she could only see their backs, and even though everyone had changed their hairstyles and dressing styles over the years, Shi Yao could still tell with a single glance that it was the Long Nuan she was looking for. Earlier that morning, the auntie was feeling a little unwell. After waking up, Long Nuan first prepared breakfast for Kiki before heading to the nearby pharmacy to buy some medicine for the auntie. After returning, she fed Kiki breakfast and sent her off to the kindergarten 20 minutes later than usual. She was afraid that if she took a taxi, the traffic would be so bad that she would be late for work after dropping off Kiki, so she took the bus instead. Since it was the morning rush hour, there were a lot of people on the bus and it was extremely crowded. She had to take care of Kiki and steady herself at the same time. So when she got off the bus, she was already sweating. When they arrived at the bus stop in the vicinity of the kindergarten, Lung Wan got off the bus. Seeing that they were already in a rush, she quickly picked Kiki up and ran toward the entrance of the kindergarten. After handing Kiki over to the principal, even though Lung Wan was in a hurry to get to work, she still patiently bent down to wave goodbye to Kiki. After Kiki entered the kindergarten, she turned around and walked toward the side of the road. She wanted to hail a taxi to go to the company, but just as she reached the roadside, before she could stand still, someone called her name from behind. Nuan Nuan. That familiar voice, that familiar tone. It was as if someone had struck Lung Nuan's acupoints, causing her to freeze on the spot. After about a minute, she heard her name again. Nuan Nuan. Before Lung Nuan could even turn around, her eyes had already reddened. Chapter 10:11. In the instant that Lung Nuan and Shi Yao's gazes met, both of them could see tears welling up in the depths of the other's eyes. Neither of them had any intention of saying a word. They simply stared at one another quietly. As they stared at one another, a stream of tears suddenly fell from the corner of Shi Yao's eyes. Feeling the moisture on her cheeks, Shi Yao subconsciously curled up her lips. In the instant that she smiled, Lung Nuan lowered her gaze and smiled as well. At the same time, tears also fell from the corner of Shi Yao's eyes. Finally, Lung Nuan got into Shi Yao's car. She sat beside her in the car for a long time, and both of their eyes were still red. Yao Yao, Nuan Nuan, both of them spoke at the same time, but after hearing the other's voice, they fell silent. It was very quiet in the car. After about 10 seconds, the two of them moved their lips again as if they had agreed to it beforehand. Nuan Nuan, Yao Yao, both of them paused for a moment. Both of them thought that if this went on, they would probably sit for the entire morning without saying anything. Thus, they immediately followed suit. You first, you first. For the third time in a row, Shi Yao and Lung Nuan spoke at the same rhythm, and the two of them couldn't help but chuckle at the chemistry between them. But this time, Shi Yao didn't say a word. Lung Nuan waited for a moment, and she knew that Shi Yao was using her silence to tell her to speak first. Thus, she moved her lips and finally managed to complete her sentence. Yao Yao, how have you been all these years? Hearing those simple words, Shi Yao's eyes reddened once more. What do people look forward to the most when they're apart? Nothing more than for her to appear before you one day and ask you with her own mouth, how have you been? Look at you. How old are you? Your child is already so big, yet you're still crying. Lung Nuan teased Shi Yao, but her eyes were even redder and redder than Shi Yao's. You have the cheek to talk about me? Look at yourself. Aren't you still the same? You're still crying. Shi Yao retorted bluntly. Her tone and expression were reminiscent of when they were still in university. With just a single glance, Lung Nuan couldn't help but tear up once more. As she wiped her nose, she said, I'm fine. I just really miss you. I'm afraid that you're not doing well, and I'm afraid that you'll be bullied by others. You're really too much. You didn't even tell us what happened and just left without saying a word. Do you know how long we've been searching for you after you left? There were so many gatherings we had, and that silly Tian Tian couldn't hold her liquor, but she still insisted on drinking. Every time she got herself drunk, she would call out your name. Back then, we promised that we'd be together after graduation. So how could you go back on your words? You left without even leaving us a single message. Also, Jiang Yu. Every time she went out to play, just like in university, she would return with a gift. Even though she couldn't find you, she would always buy 4 of them. Chapter 10:12. Nuan Nuan, I'm telling you right now, I really don't want to forgive you. Shi Yao grumbled through gritted teeth a second ago, but in the next second, she grabbed Lung Nuan's hand, as if afraid that the latter would disappear at any moment. Nuan Nuan, just this once. Just this once, all right? Shi Yao's gentle tone made the tears in Lung Nuan's eyes flow even more fiercely. Yao Yao, I didn't do it on purpose. I know everything, but we were just worried about you. We were afraid that you wouldn't have anyone to talk to when you went to work alone. We were afraid that you wouldn't be able to find someone to talk to when you got home from work. We were afraid that you wouldn't be able to eat your fill. However, it's all in the past now. You won't be alone anymore. If you're sad, happy, or want to eat, you can look for me. If you think that I'm not enough, I can bring my entire family to accompany you. As long as you don't mind the two of us, we were afraid that you wouldn't be able to eat your fill. Hearing these familiar words, Lung Nuan couldn't help but feel nostalgic. Sure, Chi Yao, it's been so many years, but you're still the same. Lung Nuan tried her best to sound as relaxed as possible. Where are Tian Tian and Yeya? Are they doing well? What are they doing? Tian Tian opened a flower shop, and Yeya managed to become the team leader in the company. Right, Tian Tian got married to Desolate Year 2 years ago. Not too long ago, Tian Tian got pregnant, and she's currently vomiting terribly. Every day, she would complain in the group chat that she's going for an abortion. If she knew that I've seen you, she'd definitely be overjoyed. Also, Liang Juicy and Yeya are nearing their wedding, and their story is a little complicated. Liang Juicy was going to marry a woman of equal status, and the marriage was already set. However, Yeya thought that he had always treated her as a brother, so she didn't make her feelings clear. Thus, they went on a blind date, but Liang Juicy was unhappy about it. Taking advantage of his position as Yeya's boss, he would cause all sorts of trouble whenever Yeya went on a blind date. In the end, the two of them ended up together. At the start of this year, Liang Juicy called off the engagement, and because of this, he was even beaten up by his father. Hearing Shi Yao's words, a hint of a smile surfaced on Lung Wan's face. It was really good. From the naive school days to the present, everyone had a home to return to. It was really good. Seeing Lung Wan smile, Shi Yao stopped nagging and turned to Lung Wan. Wan, can you stop asking about us? What about you? How are you? Even without Lung Wan's reply, Shi Yao could tell that Lung Wan must have been very tired over the years. Coco was her daughter, and she had taken on her surname. She didn't even know who her father was. This was clearly a single-parent family. Shi Yao had a child of her own, so she knew just how tough it was for a mother, from pregnancy to birth, to breastfeeding, and so on. Even she found it hard to have her entire family helping her, acting as a nanny and taking care of her, let alone Lung Wan. Just this thought alone was enough to make Shi Yao's heart ache. Before Lung Wan could speak, she spoke up once more. It must have been hard on you over the past few years, right? It must be hard to raise a child alone, right? Tell me, are you stupid? Chapter 10:13. Even though Shi Yao didn't say his name, Lung Wan knew who she was referring to. Her lips moved, wanting to say something, but in the end, she didn't say anything. You're really a fool. Tell me, if you don't want him as a person, why do you still want his child? Lung Wan didn't say a word. After a moment of silence, Shi Yao spoke up. Wan, have you ever thought about the future? It's not the same as having a father. All these years, he hasn't found a girlfriend either, and he's been waiting for you. After you left, Tian, Yeya, and I all hold a grudge against him. When we first met, none of us cared about him. Later on, when we did, we would often criticize him, but he never fell out with us. No matter how you look at it, he thinks that he deserves it. Since you're willing to bear his child, it goes without saying that you have him in your heart as well. Yao. Lung Wan didn't know what she was afraid of, but she suddenly interrupted Shi Yao, not daring to let her continue. Yao, I'm living a good life now. Even though it's tough and tiring to raise a child alone, I've managed to get through the most difficult and tiring times. Kiki is getting bigger and bigger, and I'm getting less and less worried. I really think that my current situation is pretty good. I don't want to think about anything else. Thinking back to how he had mysteriously disappeared from her world 4 years ago, how he had ignored her calls and texts. When she had personally gone to the company to look for him, all she got in return was an excuse that he was on a business trip. A hint of darkness flashed across Lung Wan's eyes. She had always been afraid of all men in the world. When she was at her most extreme, she couldn't even communicate with a man in the most basic way. It was precisely because of this that she put on a different face to women and a different face to men. She believed in love, but she didn't believe that beautiful love would ever appear on her again. It was only when he appeared in her world that she gradually became willing to accept a man, that she was willing to walk out of her past and start a new life. She thought that she would slowly slowly get better. But in the end, the result she received was just her wishful thinking. There are 80,000 Chinese characters in the world, but the word love is the most hurtful. With such thoughts in mind, Lung Wan spoke up once more. I really don't want to change the current situation anymore. Yao Yao, I appreciate your goodwill, but I don't want to put myself in danger anymore. Lung Wan paused for a moment before continuing. Yao Yao, you can meet me, Tian Tian can meet me, Yaya can meet me, and even Lin Jiej can meet me, but I don't want to meet him. By the time Lu Binlai returned from his business trip, a week had already passed. When he was on a business trip, he passed by a toy store and saw the toy that Lin Shi had been clamoring to buy but had been out of stock, so he bought it and brought it back for Lin Shi. By the time he arrived at Beijing Airport, it was only 3 in the afternoon. Since he didn't need to return to the company, he didn't have anything else to do. Thus, after the chauffeur picked him up, he noticed the toys he had bought for Lin Shi on the way back to the city, and on a whim, he had the chauffeur change the route to Lin Jiej's house. Lu Binlai knew the password to Lin Jiej's private elevator, so he made his way up without any obstructions. He pressed the doorbell, and roughly 30 seconds later, footsteps sounded from within. As the door opened, the first person to rush out was a short and adorable little girl. Chapter 10:14. He pressed the doorbell, and roughly 30 seconds later, footsteps sounded from within. The door opened, and an adorable little girl dashed out. The little girl was dressed in a pink princess dress, and her hair was combed into 2 ponytails. She ran up to Lu Binlai before finally stopping to assess him. With just a single glance, Lu Binlai immediately recognized the little girl to be the lost little girl he had met in Ji University back then. But why would she be in Lin Jiej and Shi Yao's house? While Lu Binlai was perplexed, little Lin Shi also ran out. Little Lin Shi wasn't a very attentive person in front of Lu Binlai, but when he saw his favorite toy in Lu Binlai's hands, he immediately greeted him obediently. Hello, Uncle Lu? Lin Shi's childish voice pulled Lu Binlai back to his senses. He bowed down to greet Lin Shi before turning his gaze back to the little girl. For some reason, whenever he saw the little girl, he would feel an inexplicable surge of fatherly love, such that his voice was much gentler and more amiable than when he spoke to Lin Shi. Do you still remember your uncle? The little girl nodded silently. Seeing this sight, Lin Shi immediately grew wary. Uncle Lu, how do you know Kiki? Uncle Lu, Kiki's mother has already betrothed her to me. Hearing little Snack's words, Lu Binlai burst into laughter. Is he afraid that I'll snatch Kiki away from him? Seeing that Lu Binlai wasn't saying a word, Lin Shi grew agitated. Uncle Lu, a gentleman doesn't snatch what others like. I just learned these words this morning. You're not a gentleman, Lu Binlai. Of all the children in the world, Lin Jiej's son was the only one who behaved like that. If every child was like that, there would probably be no one who would be willing to bear children anymore. Lin Shi. Uncle Lu. Seeing that Lin Shi was getting angry, Lu Binlai hurriedly stopped teasing him and said, I was the one who found her when she got lost and brought her home. After hearing the explanation, Lin Shi immediately calmed down and said, I'll thank you on Kiki's behalf then. Lu Binlai, are you being serious with that tone and attitude of a little boyfriend? Uncle Lu, I didn't expect you to have such a valiant and helpful side to you. Lu Binlai, are you praising me, or are you mocking me? Like father, like son. In order to shut Lin Shi up, Lu Binlai passed the gift in his hand over to him and said, This is what you've been looking for. I happened to see it, so I specially brought it back for you. Thank you, Uncle Lu. When Lin Shi received the gift with both hands, Lung Kiki, who was standing by the side, watched as the gift passed from Lu Binlai's hands to Lin Shi. Then, her large, black eyes turned back to Lu Binlai, and she stared at him expectantly. Judging from her expression, did she think that he had a present too after seeing him give little Snack a present and was waiting for him? Lu Binlai, who didn't know that a little girl would be in Lin Jiej's house, was at a loss as to what to do. However, he didn't want to disappoint the little girl, so he reached into his pocket and rummaged through his briefcase. Eventually, he found a piece of chocolate and passed it to the little girl, saying, This is for you. Chapter 10:15. It was a very soft and gentle touch, but it made Lu Binlai's heart soften to the extreme. All of a sudden, he felt an urge to hug this little girl. Compared to the two little ones, Lin Jiej appeared at the door a little later. "What are you doing here?" In his hands were two milk bottles, one light blue and the other light pink. Clearly, they were filled with milk for the two little ones. However, what shocked Lu Binlai wasn't the milk bottles in Lin Jiej's hands, but the fact that he was wearing a Pikachu suit. If not for his voice, Lu Binlai really wouldn't have been able to tell who the person before him was. Even though Lu Binlai wasn't saying a word, Lin Jiej could tell what he was thinking just by looking at his expression. He didn't want to do this either, but since the two little ones liked him, and Soft Bun was willing to do this for them, he couldn't possibly turn her down. With a milk bottle in hand, Lin Jiej opened the door for Lu Binlai and the two little ones to enter. Lin Jiej first passed the light blue milk bottle to Lin Shi before passing the light pink milk bottle to Coco. Coco was holding a piece of chocolate in her hand, so she took the milk bottle with her arm. She even tilted her head up to Lin Jiej and said in a cute voice, "Thank you, Uncle Pikachu." Lin Jiej used the paw of the Pikachu suit to gently stroke Coco's face, causing her to giggle. Then, he turned to look at his son, only to see that he had tossed the milk bottle to the side and was tearing open the present Lu Binlai had given him. Without any hesitation, he used the paw of the Pikachu suit to give his son a slap. A slap. Lin Shi hurriedly tossed aside his toy and picked up the milk bottle. While drinking the milk, he would lean against Lin Jiej and raise his head from time to time to call out, "Daddy," before talking to Lin Jiej. While Lin Jiej was entertaining his son, he chatted with Lu Binlai. This little girl is Lin Shi's classmate, and her name is Kiki. As Lin Jiej spoke, he shot a glance at Shi Yao, who was currently cutting fruit plates for the two little ones in the dining room. After which, he turned to Lu Binlai and said, "Her mother is away on a business trip, so there's no one to take care of Kiki. As she's close to Lin Shi, Yao Yao brought her back." Lin Jiej intentionally emphasized on the word Yao Yao, but seeing that there wasn't much of a change in Lu Binlai's expression, he couldn't help but recall how Soft Bun had warned him not to tell Lu Binlai about his encounter with Lung Wan. Thus, he could only give Lu Binlai a new reminder. Kiki is called Lung Kiki. So, she's the Lung Kiki that Snack mentioned to me before. As Lu Binlai spoke, he lowered his head to look at Kiki, only to see that she had dripped milk on her clothes. He quickly picked up a napkin and wiped her collar. Lin Jiej was rendered speechless by Lu Binlai's reply. Unfortunately, Pikachu had concealed his expression, so Lu Binlai couldn't see through his anxiety at all. Clearing his throat, Lin Jiej was just about to say something when Shi Yao walked out of the dining room with a fruit plate in her hands. Frightened, he quickly shut his mouth and lowered his head to talk to Lin Shi. Hugging the milk bottle, Long Kiki stared fixedly at the scene of Lin Jiej and Lin Shi. "Daddy, can you help me assemble the toy later?" "Daddy, I'm already full. Can I not drink the rest?" "Daddy." Chapter 10:16. Lu Binlai was currently speaking to Lin Jiej, and Shi Yao, who was seated beside Lin Jiej, would occasionally interject. Lung Kiki's daddy was very soft, but the adults in the room instantly fell silent. This was the first time someone had called Lu Binlai daddy, and it wasn't his daughter at that. He was stunned as he stared at Long Kiki, not knowing how he should react. Long Kiki raised her head and stared at Lu Binlai for a moment. Seeing that the latter wasn't responding to her, she imitated Lin Shi's tone and called out, "Daddy? Daddy, daddy." Long Kiki's voice grew louder and louder. Lu Binlai felt as if something was stuck in his throat, causing him to choke on his words. His lips moved, and it took him a great deal of effort before he managed to force out a few words. "Kiki, I'm not your father." Long Kiki only wanted someone to call Lin Shi daddy, and other than Lin Jiej, Lu Binlai was the only other person in the room, so she wanted to call him daddy too ever since she was young. No one had ever told her what a father was, so she didn't really understand what the words "I'm not your father" meant. However, she could vaguely tell that Lu Binlai was rejecting her. Her eyes reddened, but she still called out in a tender voice, "Daddy, daddy." Looking at Kiki in such a state, Shi Yao's eyes reddened in an instant. Indeed, she was still young, and there were many things she didn't understand. But just because she didn't understand didn't mean that she didn't need it. Perhaps she didn't know what a daddy was in the past, so she didn't have any need for one. However, After seeing the interaction between Lin Shi and Lin Jie, she also wanted a daddy. It was just that she had promised Lung Wan that she wouldn't tell Lu Binlai about their meeting, so there was no way she could tell Lu Binlai that Kiki was his daughter. After all, feelings couldn't be forced. Even if Nguyen Wan didn't want to return to the past, she couldn't just turn around and sell her away. But in the end, Shi Yao still couldn't bring herself to do it. So, just as Lu Binlai was about to reject Kiki, she spoke up. Kiki doesn't have a daddy, so you should just respond to her when she calls you daddy. Hearing Shi Yao's words, Lu Binlai, who was just about to reason with Long Kiki that she shouldn't call another man daddy so casually, swallowed back the words that were on the tip of his tongue. In truth, he really couldn't bring himself to turn down this little girl, but he wasn't her father in the first place, so he couldn't just agree to her request. Hearing Shi Yao's words, he couldn't help but mutter an AI toward Kiki's voice, which was still calling her father. Coco immediately smiled. Recalling how Lin Jie had fed Lin Shi milk when he didn't want to drink it, she passed the milk bottle in her hand over to Lu Binlai. Lu Binlai didn't really understand what Kiki was trying to say. It was only when Kiki said in a cute voice, "Daddy, daddy, daddy," that he hurriedly took the milk bottle and fed it to her. This was his first time feeding a child milk. He was a little nervous and his movements were stiff, but Coco seemed to be very happy. However, Coco only drank 2 mouthfuls before turning her head away and stretching her arms toward Lu Binlai. Even without Kiki's reminder, Lu Binlai already knew that she wanted him to carry her. He reached out and easily pulled Kiki into his embrace. Chapter 10:17. Lu Binlai wasn't carrying the child, and with a little bun nestled in his embrace, he didn't dare to move at all for fear of startling Kiki. Perhaps Kiki was still a little shy with strangers, but she behaved obediently in Lu Binlai's embrace. However, as time went by, perhaps feeling that she was getting closer to Lu Binlai, Kiki grew bolder and bolder, and she began squirming around in Lu Binlai's embrace. Lu Binlai didn't mind her messing around. Throughout the entire process, he looked at Kiki with a gentle gaze. Every time Kiki was about to fall, he would always be there to protect her. Lu Binlai didn't intend to stay in Lin Jie's house for too long, but due to Kiki clinging onto him, Shi Yao decided to ask him to stay for dinner. He also wanted to spend a little more time with Kiki, so he agreed to it. Throughout dinner, Kiki relied heavily on Lu Binlai. She wanted him to feed her, take food from her bowl, and wipe her mouth. Speaking of which, it was strange. Not only did Lu Binlai not find it troublesome, he even took good care of Kiki. From the initial fluster, he eventually became more like a nanny. After dinner, Lu Binlai played with Kiki for a while before Shi Yao took Kiki to the bathroom. When she came out, Kiki was dressed in a set of pink pajamas. Her soft hair hung loosely behind her back, making her look like a doll. It was about time for the 2 children to go to sleep, but Kiki refused to do so. She insisted on pestering Lu Binlai to tell her a story. Lu Binlai hugged her tirelessly as he read Snow White over and over again. Lu Binlai had no idea how long he had been reading the story, but when his mouth went dry, he lowered his head and saw that Kiki had already fallen asleep in his embrace. The little girl's face was flushed red from her sleep, making her look adorable. As Lu Binlai continued reading, he was so entranced that he didn't even realize that a warm smile had curled up on his lips. Lu Binlai was a little reluctant to let go of Kiki, so he sat quietly in her embrace for a long while. It was only when Shi Yao came over to check if Kiki had fallen asleep that he reluctantly placed her on the crib and carefully covered her with a blanket before getting up to leave the bedroom. It was already getting late, so Lu Binlai didn't stay any longer. After bidding farewell to Lin Jie and Shi Yao, he quickly took his leave. A second after Lu Binlai left the room, Shi Yao immediately picked up her phone and called Lung Wan, who had called her several times tonight, but she didn't pick up. The call was picked up immediately. After confirming that everything was fine, Lung Wan finally heaved a sigh of relief. Shi Yao chatted with Lung Wan for a while longer, and before Lung Wan hung up the call, Shi Yao hesitated for a moment before mentioning Lu Binlai. Wan, he came to our house today, and he bumped into Kiki. On the other end of the phone, Lung Wan fell silent. Kiki probably saw that Snack had a father, so she wanted a father too, so she called him Daddy. He was quite patient, and he played with Kiki for a very long time. He was the one who coaxed Kiki to sleep at night. The reason why I didn't pick up your call back then was because he was around. Yao Yao, it's getting late. You should rest early. I still have a meeting tomorrow morning. Chapter 10:18. Holding onto her phone, Yao leaned against the headboard and fell into deep thought for a moment. Eventually, she opened up her phone's photo gallery and selected a few photos she had taken of Lu Binlai accompanying Kiki before sending them over to Lung Wan's WeChat. After sending the photos, Yao didn't say anything, and Lung Wan didn't reply either. However, Yao knew that Lung Wan would definitely see them. The photos she had sent over were hilariously bright, and Lung Wan looked even happier than usual. Yao admitted that she had done it on purpose. After all, she was a mother, and she understood a mother's heart better than anyone else. Lung Wan would surely want her daughter to be happier, and she hoped that Lung Wan's unshakable resistance toward Lu Binlai would waver a little. Speaking of which, Lu Binlai had never thought that a 3-year-old girl would leave such a deep impression on him. For an entire week, he would think of her whenever his mind wandered off. But in the end, she wasn't his daughter. No matter how much he thought about her, he couldn't bring her home and raise her. Lu Binlai knew very well that he wouldn't have much interaction with that little girl in the future. Or rather, after parting ways at Lin Jiej's place, there was a good chance that he would no longer have any contact with that little girl. But no matter how aware he was of that fact, he still did quite a few things that bewitched him. When he went to the supermarket to buy some daily necessities, he saw beautiful women's clothing hanging in the window of the mall above, and even bought a few sets. While he was browsing the internet in boredom at work, he even went to look at the little girl's plush toys. In the blink of an eye, it was the weekend again. Lu Binlai caught a slight cold, so he stayed at home to catch up on his sleep. He ate takeaway for dinner, and after filling his stomach, he took out some medicine and gulped it down before falling into a deep sleep once more. After sleeping for a long time, he was awoken by his phone ringing. He took a look at the caller ID and saw that it was ... It was Keek's mother's phone number. Back then, when he received the cufflinks, he had thought of deleting the little girl's mother's phone number, but he felt that something was amiss. After some thought, he decided to save it instead. Since he didn't know the other party's name, he simply typed a ? But why was the little girl's mother calling him? Lu Binlai was perplexed, but he still picked up the call. It wasn't the little girl's mother's voice, but the little girl's. Hello? Would you like to order takeout? Hearing the serious voice of the little girl, Lu Binlai's vexed mood suddenly lightened up. The little girl was probably playing games by herself, playing house with her mother's phone, and accidentally called him. With such a thought in mind, Lu Binlai played along with Kiki and said, "Yes, Kiki. I want to order takeout. May I know what kind of takeout you can sell to me?" There was no sound from the other side of the phone. After about 10 seconds, Coco seemed to have recognized him from his voice. She suddenly stopped playing the food delivery game and started calling out, "Daddy, Daddy, Kiki, what are you yelling about?" As soon as the voice came from Coco's side, Lu Binlai felt as if someone had smashed a bat into his head, pinning him to the bed. "Kiki, it's your fault for tapping on my phone again." Chapter 10:19. Kiki, who told you to use Mommy's phone again? Kiki. Mommy. Lu Binlai felt as if his brain had crashed, and he couldn't think at all. The conversation on the other end of the phone was still going on. Kiki, who was being lectured, began to whine coquettishly. "Mommy is beautiful. Mommy is good. Mommy. Daddy. Daddy. Kiki, that's a phone, not Daddy. If you want to play games again, use your toy phone instead of Mommy's phone." Through the phone, Lu Binlai could hear the sound of approaching footsteps. He was clearly separated from the other party by an internet connection, but Lu Binlai's heart still skipped a beat along with the approaching footsteps. "Kiki, give your phone to Mommy." "No, I want Daddy, Daddy." "Kiki." Due to Keek's disobedience, the other party's tone became much harsher. "Daddy." Following Keek's aggrieved voice, the other party spoke up once more. "Kiki, who did you call?" Perhaps sensing that Kiki had made the call, the other party took the phone away. Without the phone, Kiki burst into tears. But the other party didn't show any signs of coaxing Kiki. She didn't speak, and he didn't speak either. Other than Kiki's sobs, there was no other sound. After an unknown period of time, Lu Binlai finally recovered from his daze. His mouth opened and closed, and as if afraid that everything was just a dream. His voice became so soft that it seemed as if he was muttering, "Nuan, Nuan?" As those two words left his mouth, his fingers, which were holding onto the phone, began to tremble violently. She still didn't speak. He spoke again impatiently, and this time, his voice trembled even more intensely. "Nuan, Nuan, Nuan." He called out her name a second time, but before he could finish, the call was cut off. Hearing the busy tone on the other end of the phone, he was stunned for a moment before he hurriedly dialed the number back. However, as soon as the call connected, the call was cut off. He tried calling again, but the reply he got was, "Sorry, the number you have dialed is currently busy." He knew that she must have blacklisted his number. Unwilling to give up, he tried calling again, but the same thing still didn't happen. Finally, he tossed the phone to the side. There was no way he could be mistaken. The person who had spoken earlier was definitely Lung Wan, because that voice was all too familiar to him. How many times had he dreamed of her voice in the middle of the night? She told Kiki that she was Kiki's mother. Lung Kiki. Lung Wan. Her mother went on a business trip, so there was no one to take care of Kiki. Since she and Lin Shi are close, Yao Yao brought her back. Kuku is called Lung Ku. The words that Lin Jiej had told him the other day suddenly flashed across his mind. As it turned out, Lin Jiej had already been hinting to him that day. He must have had a screw loose in his head for not noticing the other party's intentions. Yes, did he even need to think about it? Lin Jiej had intentionally emphasized on the word Yao Yao to show that Kiki was related to Shi Yao. Kiki's surname was Long, and of the people who were related to Shi Yao, the only one with the surname Long was Lung Wan, so if Kiki was Lung Wan's child, then Kiki's father. Chapter 1020. Coco was only a little over 3 years old, which meant that she was 4 months younger than Little Snack. On the night that he slept with her, Little Snack had been in his mother's womb for 4 months. The timing was definitely correct. With such thoughts in mind, Lu Binlai tossed aside his blanket and rushed into the changing room. It didn't take him long to change into a new set of clothes, grab his phone and car keys from the bed, and rush out of the house. The journey from where he lived to Lin Jiej's house should have taken around 20 minutes, but it only took him 13 minutes to reach the parking lot below Lin Jiej's house. Taking the elevator up, he didn't even press the doorbell. Instead, he stretched out his hand and began knocking on the door. Roughly 10 seconds later, a response sounded from behind the door, but to him, every second felt incomparably long. He continued knocking on the door anxiously. Hurried footsteps sounded from the doorway, and the door was pulled open. Today, Lin Jiej was no longer a Pikachu but a big yellow duck, and the big yellow duck was even clutching a diaper in its claws. Faced with such a comical sight, Lu Binlai didn't have the slightest hint of admiration or mockery. Instead, he stared at the duck head on Lin Jiej's head and went straight to the point. "You and Shi Yao met her, didn't you?" "What?" Lin Jiej couldn't figure out who the she Lu Binlai was referring to was, so he asked in bewilderment, "Say, you and Shi Yao met her a long time ago, didn't you? You knew that Lung Wan was in Beijing, so you contacted her, didn't you? It wasn't just the two of you. Zhang Yu, He Tian, and Old Xia also met her, didn't you? While I was away on a business trip, the two of you had frequent gatherings with her, right?" Lin Jiej finally recovered from his daze, but before he could say anything, Shi Yao, who had heard the loud knocking on the door, had already come out to see what was going on. She spoke up first. "How did you know?" Lin Jiej was also about to ask the same question, but hearing Shi Yao's voice, he replied without any hesitation, "Yao Yao, I didn't say that." Lu Binlai. Did he have to have such a strong desire to live? To avoid any unnecessary misunderstandings, Lu Binlai quickly explained everything that had happened. "I met Kiki before I met her at your place. She was alone back then, and she got lost. I was the one who brought her home, and Kiki grabbed my cufflinks. Her mother contacted me through a message." At this point, Lu Binlai suddenly recalled the day when he received a call from Coco's mother at the airport. As soon as he opened his mouth, she went completely silent. So, she recognized him. She knew who he was, so she hung up the phone. No wonder that phone call made him feel inexplicably uneasy. It was her call. No wonder, no wonder. She knew about me long ago. What? Chapter 10:21. At this point, Yao knew that even if she didn't say anything, she wouldn't be able to hide it from Lu Binlai. Perhaps this was fate. Regardless of whether Lung Wan wanted to meet Lu Binlai or not, the heavens were bent on their reunion. Yao nodded lightly in response to Lu Binlai's words. Even though Yao didn't say a word, Lu Binlai's heart was still beating furiously. Kiki was really his daughter. That short and adorable little girl whom he wished he could bring home to raise was actually his daughter. The daughter that Long Nuan gave birth to for him. Ever since she left, he had been waiting for their next meeting. He had imagined countless scenarios in which they would meet again, but never could he have imagined that she would appear in his life once more, and with a daughter at that. From the moment she left him to learning that she was pregnant to the moment she decided to give birth to the child. The 10 months of pregnancy, the near-death experience of giving birth, and finally the confinement period to raise his daughter to this age. It took a total of 4 years. For years. How did she manage to survive these 4 years alone? For years ago, they parted ways just like that. He knew that he wasn't good enough, but he also knew that he wasn't that important to her. He had always felt that he was the one who had given his all to their relationship. In fact, he had even thought that he was the one who had been waiting for her for the past 4 years. But she actually gave birth to a child for him. Why would she do that? She had always been indifferent toward him. She wouldn't let him touch her, and she wouldn't say anything intimate to him. In fact, she even had an ex. With such thoughts in mind, Lu Binlai turned around to leave to look for Lung Wan. But barely after he pressed the button for the elevator, Yao suddenly called out to him, "Lu Binlai?" Lu Binlai turned around. Yao pondered for a moment before saying, "Actually, I've mentioned you to Lung Wan before, but she was very against it. It's not that we don't want to tell you, it's just that she didn't want to talk to us. She said that she's doing fine at the moment, and she doesn't want to think about anything else. So, I'm thinking that if you look for her, she might not want to have anything to do with you. If you really like her, you should be more tolerant of her and give her more time and space. Don't force her too much." Lu Binlai hesitated for a moment before nodding his head and entering the elevator. After returning to the car, he sat in a daze for a moment before starting the car and heading to Lung Wan's neighborhood. In just a short month, Lin Jiai and Qin Ting had already met 10 times. Initially, whenever Lin Jiai and Qin Ting met, Xia Shangzhou would be the one in charge of escorting them. There were a couple of times when they went out to play, and Xia Shangzhou would tag along, so he could see the interaction between Lin Jiai and Qin Ting from the car. Every time Lin Jiai finished her meeting with Qin Ting, she would tell Xia Shangzhou what she and Qin Ting talked about and how far they had progressed. Xia Shangzhou had always thought that he was able to handle it, but he soon realized that he had overestimated himself. As Lin Jiai and Qin Ting got along better and better, the number of times he lost control of himself also increased. For example, there were times when he heard Lin Jiai talking about Qin Ting while driving, and he would suddenly step on the brakes. Chapter 10:22. At first, Xia Shangzhou was still able to find an excuse to brush it off. But as the number of times increased, Lin Jiai gradually noticed something amiss with him, and she started asking him what was wrong. His mood seemed to be a little off lately. Did something happen? Xia Shangzhou was really afraid that he would expose himself before Lin Jiai, so he could only find a suitable opportunity to apply for a business trip and leave Lin Jiai for a short period of time. By the time he finished his work and returned to Beijing, it was already early August. He arrived at the airport at noon. He had work to do in the afternoon, so he didn't even go home and directly took a taxi to the company. Lin Jiai was supposed to meet a client in the afternoon, and upon seeing that he had returned, she had him accompany her to meet the client in the company. However, the client this time around was a little difficult to deal with. By the time they sent the client away, the sunny skies had already darkened. Lin Jiai didn't have any plans that night, and Xia Shangzhou had just returned from a business trip. So, after they were done with their work, Lin Jiai asked Xia Shangzhou if he was busy. After Xia Shangzhou replied that he was free, Lin Jiai suggested having a meal together. Xia Shangzhou did not refuse. Lin Jiai didn't want to wear her work attire for dinner, so she had Xia Shangzhou wait for her while she headed to the resting room in the office to change her clothes. While Lin Jiai was changing her clothes, Xia Shangzhou received a call from the front desk. There was an express mail for Lin Jiai. Since there was nothing much to do, Xia Shangzhou headed over to the front desk to retrieve the package for Lin Jiai. By the time Zhang Xian returned to Lin Jiai's office, Lin Jiai had just finished changing her clothes and was walking out of the resting room. Express delivery. Xia Shangzhou placed a large box on the table. Curious as to what was inside the box, Lin Jiai had Xia Shangzhou wait for a moment before taking out the delivery knife from the drawer. Before Lin Jiai could open the package, Xia Shangzhou suddenly recalled how she had cut herself with the delivery knife. So he spoke up first. "Let me help you open it." Lin Jiai passed the delivery knife over to Xia Shangzhou. Soon, the package was unpacked. Xia Shangzhou stood by the side with the delivery knife in hand, making way for Lin Jiai so that she could open the package herself. The last gift to be opened was a bag. The latest Chanel collection. It had just gone on sale yesterday, and Lin Jiai had even posted a picture of it on her Moments. "That's strange. I haven't ordered this bag yet. Who gave it to me?" Lin Jiai asked doubtfully as she grabbed her bag, following which, her phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID and immediately put on a smile. She turned to look at Xia Shangzhou. "Navigator, wait for me for a while." After Xia Shangzhou nodded, Lin Jiai swiped her finger across the screen and answered the call. "Hello, Qin Ting." Hearing this name, Xia Shangzhou lowered his head and took out his phone. "Huh, how did you know I received a package?" "Oh no, this bag is from you." "I like it, of course I like it. What are you doing?" "What? In a taxi? Why are there foreigners talking next to you? Where are you?" Shortly after Lin Jiai said those words, Xia Shangzhou watched as she hung up the call. A moment later, she received another call from her phone. She picked it up, and it turned into a video call. Lin Jiai was looking at her phone screen, so the call was put on speakerphone. "You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.